1973. A grey Wednesday morning in January. Outside, the milkman's float rattles down the street, glass bottles knocking together in the crate. A man stands in his hallway with a wool overcoat pulled over his cardigan. Not because he's going out, because the house is cold. He looks at the small thermometer hanging on the wallpaper. Then he turns the storage heater down by the smallest amount his fingers can manage. He knows what electricity costs. Last month, the meter reader left a slip of paper and he read every line. That is what people did. They read things, they counted things. They made the week fit the money. If the room was cold, you pulled the blanket higher. If the wireless was on, you listened. If the front room was freezing, you did not sit in the front room. It made sense. Coal was visible. Milk bottles were visible. Coins were visible. You could see the week shrinking in your hand. That old habit kept a lot of families safe. But here is the uncomfortable part. The same habit that helped people survive the 3-day week, power cuts and hard winters is now causing some UK pensioners to miss support, overpay bills and sit in cold rooms when help may be available. Not because they are careless, because the rules changed while their instincts stayed the same. Now jump to 2026. A brown envelope drops through the letterbox. It lands on the mat with that dull little slap official letters always seem to have. DWP, HMRC, Council, it does not really matter. The body knows before the eyes do. The person who picks it up does not open it straight away. They put it on the mantelpiece behind the clock, where difficult letters go to behave themselves for a few hours. They tell themselves they already know what it says. They pay their council tax, they avoid debt, they do not ask for things, they live quietly on a state pension, maybe with a small workplace pension from an old job, and they do their best not to be a bother. If you are new here, I am Paulo. On this channel, we take old British money habits and turn them into clear, practical lessons for UK pensioners today. And today, I want to talk about one cost of living rule many people are getting wrong. It is not a rule written on a form. Ça. It is the rule inside the head. The old rule says, if you have managed this long, keep managing. The modern system says something else entirely. It says, if you do not check, you may lose out. Most people think the cost of living problem is only about prices. Gas, electricity, bread, butter, insurance, a bag of potatoes that somehow now requires a small committee meeting. Prices matter, of course, but the real trap is not always the price. It is the pattern. The old pattern was simple. Use less, ask for less, touch your savings only in a crisis, keep your head down, make do. That pattern worked in a world where money moved slowly and most costs announced themselves. A man came to the door. A bill arrived once in a while. A shopkeeper told you the price. The meter moved where you could see it. Today, the money often leaves without drama. A direct debit changes, a tax code shifts, a standing charge keeps running. A renewal goes through. A benefit goes unclaimed because someone decided they probably would not qualify. No big scene, just a little less money at the end of the month. We will get to the 24-hour check later. That is the practical bit. Write that down if you need to. But first, look at the first sign. The dark hallway, the first sign is playing out in houses all over the country. The single radiator rule. Years ago, if a room was not being used, you shut the door, you turned the valve. You lived in the kitchen or the small back room where the fire was on. That was not foolish, it was sensible. If you burned less fuel, you spent less money. Simple. Today, the picture is messier. Modern energy bills include standing charges. That means you can pay a daily amount just for being connected before you boil a kettle or turn on a light. So yes, using less can still reduce the bill. But sitting in the cold does not make the fixed part disappear. That is where people get caught. A pensioner sits in a front room with the curtains closed and 2 cardigans on, thinking every bit of discomfort is saving money. Some of it may be. Some of it is just discomfort. Meanwhile, damp gets into the corner behind the sofa. The wallpaper lifts. The house starts costing money in another way. The old rule said, turn it off and save. The better modern rule is, understand what part of the bill you can actually control. That is not as neat, but it is more useful. The second sign sits inside an old belief. A person owns their home, maybe outright. They have a little money in a building society account, not a fortune, just a cushion, a roof cushion, a cooker cushion, a funeral cushion, though nobody likes saying that out loud, and because of that, they assume they cannot ask for help. The sentence usually sounds like this: I've got a bit put by, there are people worse off than me. That sounds decent. It sounds British. It sounds like something said while stirring tea and refusing to make a fuss. But it can be wrong. Gov.uk says homeowners can still get pension credit. It also says savings and investments of £10,000 or less do not affect pension credit. If savings are above £10,000, they are treated as weekly income under the rules. So owning bricks and mortar does not automatically shut the door. Having modest savings does not automatically shut the door either. That surprises a lot of people, and it should worry us, because many never check. They decide against themselves before the government has even looked at the numbers. The old rule was, savings means self-reliance. The modern rule is, savings mean check the calculation properly. Now I understand why this is hard. A lot of people were raised to treat help as a last resort. The very last resort, after the tins were used, after the coat was patched, after the electric fire was left off and the good biscuits were hidden from visitors who looked hungry. That kind of pride came from somewhere real. It came from parents who remembered rationing. It came from years when waste was close to sin. It came from households where you did not throw away bread, string, jars, screws, buttons, or anything that might be useful one day. And yes, half those things lived in a drawer for 23 years and were never useful once. Still, the habit made sense, but there is a difference between charity and entitlement. Pension credit is not a little collection tin on a church counter. Council tax support is not someone doing you a favor out of pity. These are parts of a system people funded through work, taxes, and national insurance. You are not taking a loaf from someone else's basket by checking. You are finding out whether the system owes your household something. That is not weakness, that is paperwork. Annoying paperwork, yes, but paperwork. The third sign comes from HMRC, and this one catches people quietly. For years, many retirees had a simple picture in their mind. Tax was something that happened to wages. You worked, you paid tax, then one day you retired and the taxman mostly left you alone. That picture is out of date for many people. The state pension has risen under the triple lock. That can be good news. But the standard personal allowance is £12,570 for the 2026 to 2027 tax year, according to gov.uk. So if someone has the state pension plus a small workplace pension, the numbers can creep closer to the tax line than expected. Nobody has to become rich for this to happen. That is the nasty part. A modest pension from the council, a little railway pension, something from a factory job, a few extra pounds that used to feel harmless. Then a letter arrives, or the tax code changes. Or the monthly amount looks different and nobody has explained it in plain English. The old rule said, ordinary retirement income is too small to worry about tax. The modern rule says, check the total, not the feeling. This is where the modern system feels so different from the old one. Years ago, money arguments had faces. The rent man came round, the milkman knocked, the coal merchant gave you the amount. You could count the coins into a hand and know the thing was paid. Today, money has become quiet. A tax code changes quietly, a direct debit rises quietly, a broadband contract rolls over quietly, an insurance renewal turns up in tiny print and hopes you are too tired to phone. That is what I call the silent extractor. It is not one dramatic bill. It is 5 small movements you did not notice. And this is where older habits can fail. A lot of pensioners still think that if something is set up at the bank, it is being handled. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is just being collected. There is a difference. The old rule said, if it is arranged, it is safe. The modern rule says, if it is arranged, review it. Think about the direct debits in a current account. Insurance, water, broadband, phone line, energy, maybe a charity donation, maybe a subscription that began as a free trial and now behaves like it owns the place. Many of these payments are not bad. Some are necessary. The danger is drift. A few pounds here, a few pounds there. A renewal that went up. A tariff that is no longer competitive. A service nobody uses. A phone package built for a household that no longer exists. The print is small. The statements are dull. The online account asks for a password, a code, another code, and then your patience, which by that point has left the room. So people leave it. That is human. But it is expensive. Once a month, 1 page of the bank statement deserves a cup of tea and 10 honest minutes. Not a full financial overhaul. Nobody wants that on a Wednesday. Just ask which payments have gone up, which ones still matter, and which ones are only there because nobody stopped them. Quiet money needs loud checking. The 5th sign is the one I hear most often. Someone else needs it more than me. It sounds kind. It may even be kind. But it can also be a very expensive sentence. People say it about pension credit, they say it about council tax support, they say it about help with bills, they say it before they even know whether they qualify. The problem is that public support is not handed out by who feels most deserving in their living room. It has rules, numbers, thresholds, circumstances. If you qualify and do not claim, the money does not automatically go to a nicer person down the road who keeps the garden tidy. It often just remains unclaimed. That is the part people forget. Refusing to check does not feed another household. It may only leave yours colder, tighter, and more anxious than it needs to be. Pride can be a fine thing, but pride is a poor blanket.
Let's be plain. The cost of this old rule is not only financial. It is sitting in a darker room than you need to. It is buying the cheapest loaf when you wanted the decent one from the local bakery. It is ignoring a letter for 4 days because you cannot face one more official sentence that sounds like it was written by a locked filing cabinet. It is telling your daughter everything is fine when you have started timing the heating. It is pretending the little worry in your chest is just age. Sometimes, yes, money is tight because prices are high. But sometimes money is tighter because nobody checked what the household can claim, what the tax code means, or which direct debit has been quietly creeping up. That is why this matters. The old pride protected people from waste. Now it can protect the system from having to pay. That is a rotten bargain. Here is the practical part. Tomorrow morning, make a cup of tea and get one piece of paper. Not a spreadsheet, not a new app, just paper. Write down your weekly state pension. Then add any private pension, workplace pension, or other regular income. For 2026 to 2027, gov.uk says pension credit can top up weekly income to £238 if you are single, or £363.25 if you have a partner. If your weekly income is below those figures, check. Do not guess. Do not ask the neighbor over the fence and treat that as low. Neighbors mean well, but so did half the people who told us margarine was better than butter. Use the pension credit calculator on gov.uk if you are comfortable online. If not, phone the pension credit claim line. You can also speak to Citizens Advice, Age UK, or your local council. The point is not to become an expert. The point is to stop deciding no before anyone official has checked. Pension credit is not always just a few extra pounds. For some people, it can open doors to other help. Depending on circumstances, it may connect to council tax reduction, help with housing costs if you rent, a free TV license if you are 75 or over, and other support. Winter fuel payment rules have changed in recent years, so do not rely on memory there either. Gov.uk says eligible people should get a letter telling them how much they will receive. And people who think they are eligible but do not get a letter should check whether they need to claim. That is the theme of this whole video. Check, not panic. Check, not assume. Check. The old household book worked because someone looked at it. The modern version is the same. Look at the numbers before the numbers decide for you.
Now, I do not want to throw old habits in the bin. That would be foolish. The old habits had dignity. A biscuit tin with rent money in it. A notebook ruled by hand. A woman saving buttons because good buttons cost money. A man folding a bill back into its envelope because the due date mattered. There was respect in that. Respect for work. Respect for money. Respect for not wasting what took hours to earn. Keep that. Please keep that. But do not keep the part that says suffering quietly is always noble. Sometimes it is not noble, sometimes it is just cold. Your parents may have saved string, jars, and brown paper, but they also collected what they were due when the time came. They went to the post office counter and did not apologize for getting older. That is the bit worth remembering. The goal is not to become dependent. The goal is to stop missing what already belongs in the calculation. So here is the new cost of living rule. Do not measure your security by pride. Measure it by the numbers. How much comes in each week? What fixed payments leave without asking? What has crept up? What help have you assumed you cannot get? What letter have you left behind the clock? That is the rule. Not glamorous, not dramatic, very useful. The old rule said, manage with less. The new rule says, check before you go, without. There is a difference. One is discipline. The other can become unnecessary hardship. And if you grew up in a household where nobody wasted a crust of bread, then you already understand the principle. Leaving support unclaimed when you may qualify is also waste. It just wears a government logo and arrives in smaller print. If this video helped, please subscribe. We are bringing back old British money habits, but adjusting them for the systems pensioners actually face today. Before you go, I want to ask you something. What was the one thing your mother, father, or grandparents absolutely refused to waste money on? Was it heating, bread, clothes, electricity, a taxi, unless the situation was practically royal? Put it in the comments. And be honest. Did you think they were being difficult back then, or did you only realize years later that they were annoyingly right? I read every story. Until next time, take care of yourself. Open the brown envelope and check your numbers before the system decides them for you.